When reincarnating, they do not suffer the great memory loss that we do when we incarnate. They did it through their expanded consciousness and tantric interdimensional sex meditations. This is how Thoth was a priest king of Atlantis for thousands of years and stayed on Earth until 15 years ago when he gave all of his memories and understanding about sacred geometry to a man named Drunvalo Melchizedek.
Melchizedek was a fraud. The Martians' attempt at
controlling the world took place on one of the small islands in the west of Atlantis. This place today is known as the Bermuda Triangle.
Fuck off, that isn't real.
The top of the state that Merkaba is still there on the seafloor today, but from what I know, it's going to be corrected soon. The Nakals did their best to
Why
save
can't we go
Atlantis.
watch it
They
then?
sent most of the lower dimensional beings back, at least as many as they could, and sealed up the dimensional tear. Despite
Get
this,
the fuck out of here,
situation got really
Thetans.
bad, really fast. All of the economic systems collapsed. Financial, social, and all concepts of how life ought to be completely broke down. Everyone on Atlantis began getting sick with weird diseases, and the entire continent went into a state of survival. Life was no longer about living. It became about surviving until tomorrow. It was a literal hell on Earth. The Nakals had no idea what to do. They were children compared to the events that had been thrust upon them. So
Why?
they
Weren't they
prayed.
super
They
higher
prayed to the
consciousness
highest levels
beings?
of conscious life. We were going to fall. We were going to hit rock bottom, level 1, the lowest place we possibly could be in the universe, and
Don't
still
worry,
survive.
you can just grind
Also,
pigs for
we were
like
changing
5
polarity.
minutes and you'll be
We
back
were
at
no
level 2
longer
again.
a female species, so we were starting from square one as a male species.
Oh?
And finally, and this was the shocker, we would only have 13,000 years to return to Christ consciousness. Normally,
fuck
it
is
takes
Christ
hundreds of thousands of
consciousness?
years for a species to get to Christ consciousness.
What?
We had to do it in a fraction of the time. If
What?
we didn't, we would not survive. This has never happened before in the universe, ever. Thoth,
What?
who was the priest king of Atlantis at the time, learned that they would have to perform this experiment on themselves. To understand
But
what they
those
did,
are-
we have to talk about consciousness grids.
Egyptian
A
gods.
planetary grid is an etheric crystalline structure that envelops the planet and holds the consciousness of any one species of life. This grid
What?
does have an electromagnetic component associated with
What?
the third dimension, but it also
Okay.
has a component for every
So we
dimension
can
as
measure
well.
it?
These grids are geometric, of course, and science will eventually discover that there is a grid for every species in the world.
What?
Each of these grids have their own geometry and are unique. There's
grid
not
of
another
what?
one like it.
They
Just
have
as the species
electromagnetic
itself are unique.
components?
These grids give off light
Species
as well,
aren't
and from
unique.
space they can be seen as the source of the bluish glow around the Earth.
What?
What Thoth and friends had to do was
That's
create a
like
synthetic
light
Christ
scattering in
consciousness
our
grid,
atmosphere,
allowing
dude.
humans to ascend. Something definitely connects us all, and the field of noetics is learning more about it daily.
Noetics!
It's mass
Oh
consciousness.
god.
In lesson
Pseudoscience.
11, I showed you the 3 levels of consciousness. Each of these levels have their own consciousness grids around the planet, and our second level grid is based on squares and triangles. Many governments of the world, especially the Russian and US governments,
What?
were studying our grids back in the 60s and
Get the
probably
fuck
earlier.
outta here.
When mapping out the grid on the planet, you find little military bases on many of the nodal points of the grid. There are tons of these bases way out in the middle of nowhere, like on little islands like Guam. This couldn't be a coincidence that these government powers
Oh god. Oh my lord. Oh, fucking hell, dude. Is it a coincidence? I think not. Oh, oh god. Oh Jesus, that killed me. All right.
place their bases right where these pyramids were aligned precisely
didn't
with
say
both
any of
Fibonacci
this.
and golden mean spirals emanating from out of the solar cross.
That's not correct.
Interestingly enough, Edgar Cayce also channeled that the pyramids were constructed in this time. The pyramids were also found to be built from the top down. The stones on
Bullshit.
top were placed first, which has baffled researchers ever since.
Bullshit.
Every time more is learned about the pyramids, we move further
Well,
into doubt
placed
on
at-
understanding how they were formed.
What does that even
If what
mean?
Thoth
They
says
were
is true. Well, that explains everything.
No, it explains nothing.
From there, Thoth and friends constructed an entire network of temples and structures along this grid fourth dimensionally, placing them on nodes on the new synthetic Christ consciousness grid they were creating. All of them were made with Fibonacci or golden mean spirals, and all of them were mathematically referred back to the solar cross in Egypt through the Great Pyramid. The creation of all of the sacred sites on the planet were no accident. It was a single consciousness that created them all, from Machu
What?
Picchu to Stonehenge to Zaghuan.
Then why did they have very distinct, like, construction methods influenced by the culture of where they were built? Where were they built in different eras, in different times, worshipping different gods with different languages on the walls?